Hi everyone, and in this video I'll be talking about which LS engine to get for your application and bolting on horsepower. Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel about building kit cars and other topics. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the notification buttons below and share with others on social media. So I recently got a surprise when I took my 6-liter block to the machine shop to get worked on. It turns out it was bored 30 over and it was in great shape. I just needed a new hone to crosshatch it. I thought I should make this video about LS engines and the horsepower you could bolt on because there is one point that I kind of missed as I was researching how to build horsepower into an LS. Now, it was common sense for me to know that a 6-liter engine is going to have more horsepower than a 5.3-liter engine. I got that, that's a no-brainer. Then bolting on a bigger intake and adding a cam and such will bring more horsepower. Got that, no-brainer. But here's the one thing I never got until I reread through some of the information recently. And maybe it's because I was just overloaded with tons of new information and I really couldn't see through the forest. Those aftermarket additions do not add the same amount of horsepower to every engine. It varies. Just like some combinations of aftermarket parts do not bring any advantages on their own unless they are both added. So I started looking at different engine build case studies, specifically LS, and was dumbfounded with the no movement of horsepower on smaller engines. Think of it like a multiplier. The smaller the chamber size of the engine, the smaller the multiplication of capabilities of horsepower gains will be. And the bigger the chamber size, the more multiplication factor will be. It's not necessarily linear, or it seems like it's not linear, but it probably exactly is. For example, if I have a 5.7 LS engine and I add a fast intake on it, at 4,000 RPMs, I get a gain of 1 horsepower compared to the stock LS6 intake. Now that fast intake, and Fast is a brand, if you didn't know, is $1,000. Now, if you're at 6,000 RPMs, you might gain 7 to 10 horsepower. But I'm on the streets, and I'm not drag racing around, so I'm never really going to be in that range for more than 2 seconds. And I'm in the 1,000 to 4,000 range all day long. So spending $1,000 on a 1 horsepower boost to me is kind of asinine and silly. And kind of ignorant in a sense of not knowing what you're doing. And this information is not anywhere on the internet that I found without digging in somewhere really, really deep. There's all these, shootouts between intakes and different things like that. And it's all on already pimped out engines, nothing on stock engines. So when you're seeing all these reviews of how these things got, 50, 75 more horsepower when you add on this intake, well, that's on a hot rodded engine already. When you add that intake to a stock engine, you're getting minimal gains. That really isn't worth the money. Now for a second example, with the same exact stock engine, if we add in a hotter cam at 4,000 RPMs, we'll get a 20 horsepower boost. Now that is only 500 or less for the cam and across the full range. Add ported heads with the cam and we only add another 4 horsepower. That's not enough horsepower in my operating range, and heads are not cheap, possibly thousands of dollars. But this same combination at 6,000 RPMs yields 22 with just the cam and with both a total of 73 horsepower. Now that's definitely noticeable. But how often are you going to be at that range peaking out? So now imagine this was a 5.3-liter engine. The fast intake would virtually do nothing. And the cam and heads would be a significant percentage smaller in gains. And yet you spent $4,000. Now if we want to talk about superchargers on a 6.0-liter engine, at 4,000 RPMs it will add 105 horsepower. And at 5,800 RPMs, about 185 horsepower. If it was a 5.3-liter engine, you're not going to see those numbers. With turbo, which is the most significant boost, on a 4.8-liter engine compared to a 6.0-liter engine is really interesting. Let's use high RPMs since that's where turbos work the best. So we're going to read at 5,100 RPMs with an 8-pound boost on the turbo. So a stock 6.0 liter engine is about 337 horsepower. When it's boosted, that 6.0 liter is 746 horsepower. Now a boosted 4.8 liter engine is 542 horsepower. That's over a 200 horsepower difference between the engines. Now you might be saying, well, of course the engine's way smaller. Well, yes, the combustion chamber is way smaller, but the outside is exactly the same. The weight is possibly the same, or even for the smaller engines, heavier because they're not as bored out. The LS engines are all basically the same on the outside, and it's just the chamber size that is changing on the inside. So if you're getting a junkyard engine and it's a 5.3 liter and it's $1,000 and a 6.0 liter is $1,300, it's worth getting the 6.0 if you're going for horsepower, because there'll be a significant gain due to the size of the chamber when you add on aftermarket parts. Now let's factor in one other thing. Horsepower effectiveness is all based off the average weight of a vehicle, which is for the most part around 3,500 to 4,000 pounds. This excludes big trucks. So for simple math, we'll say 4,000. So if you have a 300 horsepower engine and a 4,000 pound car, and you take the same engine and put it in a 2,000 pound car, it will feel like you doubled your horsepower because it does not have to drag all this weight around. Basically like putting a 600 horsepower engine in your original 4,000 pound car. So when selecting an engine, I would look at what is the application, how heavy will the car be, and then what your budget is. And then you have to do the research for what is realistic gains for the money you want to spend. And so if I take a bone stock Vortec LS engine out of a truck and throw it into a 2,000 pound kit car, we are talking anywhere between 285 to 325 horsepower. This car will probably be faster than most cars on the road, and I didn't spend a dime in modification. At that point, you just want to make it look pretty. And if you're going to have an exposed engine, you're going to want to paint it and change that truck intake. Otherwise, you can leave it as is and keep it covered up. Hopefully this gave you some realistic boundaries of what these engines can do and how different the add-ons affect different applications. If you've not seen any of my other videos on rebuilding an LS engine, please check out my channel, which will give you a lot more insight on cost and the results. And until next time, please hit the subscribe and notification buttons and have a great day.